Good evening, committee members. We're going to be getting started in just a moment. We understand there's a lot of traffic, and we're trying to give some of our school representatives a few more minutes so that we can get a little bit better representation on our committee before we begin. So please bear with us. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to meeting number 3 of the Northwest Area Elementary Boundary Study. I'm Chris Percato from the Office of Strategic Planning for Baltimore County Public Schools. Just a few housekeeping tips. First off, thank you very much for bearing with us while we waited for through traffic for some of our committee member representatives to show up. Please make sure you have signed in at the sign-in sheets. We have sheets for our observers and sheets for our committee members. In the event of an emergency that we would need to evacuate the room, you notice the exit signs around you. Best exit is to the rear where we came into the school at and out the front doors, and then we would refer to those sign-in sheets to make sure that we have good accountability for everyone. So again, please make sure you take a moment to sign in. If anyone would request or desire Spanish translation, Mr. Pedro is here with us tonight. We thank him very much for his services, and he can translate for anyone that would like some Spanish translation. You'll notice if you visit our website at www.bcps.org, you can follow through to the resources button at the bottom of the page, and it will point you to the Northwest Area Elementary Boundary Study. We do have a new look for our web page. It is pointing to a new fresh page that's a little bit more accessible, a little cleaner look. If you should have the old page bookmarked, that's okay. It will has a link pointing you to the new page, so you'll have no trouble finding us. We remind all our committee members to please avail yourself to the web page, especially the comments section at the bottom, where we gather and post any comments that the community has submitted. So those are cataloged there on our website. So please be sure throughout the process that you're regularly referring and checking the comments from our stakeholders to consider their feedback. Restrooms are in the front lobby, and do note that paper towel dispensers are outside in the hallway. With that, we're going to get started. Mr. James Cooper from Cropper GIS is here to kick us off. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. And one final word, committee, I really appreciate you. We did a great job last meeting. Please, if you need to speak, please step up to one of the 2 microphones that BCPS-TV has so graciously set up for us. It's great that you walk out to the mic, because that way the cameras can capture you and your face, as well as capture your voice. Thanks so much for accommodating that. It makes for a great production for those that are viewing us on live stream or on the recording at home. Thank you so much. James?
Yes, thank you, Chris, and again, thank you, committee members, for being here tonight, observers, those viewing virtually. Before I get started on my presentation, we had a committee member that wants to come speak and give a statement before we get started here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Schaefer, and I'm a teacher at Summit Park, and I was also a parent at Summit Park. I just wanted to share a few things before we started based on comments that were made here and comments online. First of all, for our parents that are a little nervous that we're getting all these children, we will also get teachers at the same ratio, so our classes will not become very overcrowded. Another point I thought was really important to make, we've always been aware of the spots in our community that went to Wellwood and didn't come to Summit Park, and every year we take new teachers on a ride around our community so they can see where our children are coming from, and everyone is always, I don't know if shocked is the right word, but always saying, that's odd, that's strange. So we are very happy to have those parts of our community back with us. Another thing I wanted to say very quickly is that a good teacher teaches behavior, just like we teach reading, we teach math, we teach behavior. We teach children what it looks like to be a school student. We teach them why they need to do it. We give them a reason, a purpose, so we're not just saying you do this because I'm in charge and that's why. We teach them consequences, not just consequence for your behavior, but what are the consequences of your peers, of your hallmates. If you don't behave, this is what happens. So we teach behavior just like we teach anything else. Also, when we look at building diversity, I feel, a lot of my colleagues feel, how much richer our classrooms will be, because a lot of us, all of us, we come from our homes, and that's our first lesson. We see how our parents behave, we see how our parents act, what they say, what they do, and that's our first view of the world. When we come to school, a lot of things that teachers try to do is build your knowledge of what everyone is like and not just the people you see. So if our classrooms are rich in diversity, those will be authentic conversations. Children will learn to trust people that they never had the opportunity to learn to trust before. They will have opportunities to engage with each other, to really learn from each other. They'll learn to respect people that are different than them, be curious, be able to ask safe questions in an environment that they normally wouldn't have. So we're really looking forward to keep building our diversity at Summit Park. We feel that it builds a richer classroom. Hopefully it will break down some stereotypes that a lot of people just naturally grow up with and they don't even know they have them, because we'll be able to have authentic conversations and learn about each other and learn how to respect each other and interact in respectful ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Susan. Does anybody have anything to say following up with that? It's much appreciated, Susan. So just looking at our agenda here, I'll try to breeze through this. We got a little late start. Don't want to keep you guys here too late. The meeting will run similar to the previous two meetings. We'll go over some new information, a few follow-up slides, some questions that were asked at the previous meeting, and then we'll dive into the handout, a quick overview of the stat handout that has options 1 through 7. Have you guys working within your small working groups, have some discussions around these maps and these configurations, and then have an open discussion with the committee as a whole. And then we'll try to get out of here by 8 at the latest. So just looking at our timeline here we are at meeting 3, getting to that midway point throughout this boundary study process. Today, we'll be diving into about 7 options, and then at our following meeting on October 25th, we'll look to evaluate options furthermore, but make some decisions to try to narrow down this set of options down to about 3 or 4 options that we feel as a committee are viable to bring forward to the public information session that is scheduled on November 8th. So looking at our follow-up community feedback, as Susan outlined about the comments, and Chris outlined as well, as of October 6th, we have received 13 comments from the public. They're available on the Northwest Elementary School Boundary Study webpage on the BCPS website, www.bcps.org under resources. And we encourage the committee members to review these comments on a regular basis. At this meeting as well, we have computers here, or you can access it from your mobile device. And also outside of this meeting to kind of get an idea of the public consensus of this process so far. And definitely want the committee to take in the feedback from those comments as they make decisions about options moving forward. So a quick follow-up question from meeting 2 is, how will the early childhood programs currently at Cantfield be converted to full day? And will there be continuity of services available through grade 5? And as programs are relocated from Cantfield, they will be converted to full day programs instead of half day. The Office of Special Education and IEP teams will work with families to ensure the proper placement and the supports are provided. IEP teams meet in the spring of every school year to discuss the placement for the following school year, so to make sure that adequate resources are there for these programs at each facility. Go to the mic.
Good evening, everyone. I don't want to lose sight of that particular addressal. So I'm concerned a little bit about this because currently these half-day programs, consider you have a morning group and an afternoon group. If they are converted to full day, that means you're requiring that much more staff. And I don't know if that's fully been thought through, but it seems there's a shortage right now. So if there's just this notion of it'll be converted, like, well, it could be a blunder in that sense. So I'm still a little concerned about that.
Concerned about resources. Paul back there, he has a statement.
Thank you for your comment and your concern. That is a concern, and when we expand pre-K, which we're required to do by the state, it's a coordinated effort between all the different offices, including HR. So every year, we've been converting half days to full day at a certain number of schools because that number is how many teachers we can get to properly staff. We're not going faster than we can provide the resources for. So I thank you for that point.
Thank you, Paul. Good question, good concern. Another question from meeting 2 is there a target relief for Scotch Branch Elementary School? I know during the previous meetings there's been voiced by some committee members to kind of leave Scotch Branch alone, given that they will be involved in a boundary study process in fall of 2024. And it is advised that Scotch Branch should be provided capacity relief in this first study. There's no specific target utilization for Scotch Branch, although just like all the other schools in the study area, an ideal utilization would be around that study area average of 93%. And the Scotch Branch Elementary School Capital Project will add additional seats to this school, and these seats will be utilized to help provide capacity relief in the Northwest Elementary Boundary Study 2 that will include Scotch Branch, Deer Park, and a few other schools to the west of this study area. Another follow-up question was, what is the magnet program at Wellwood Elementary School? Is there potential to move that program to Summit Park Elementary School? The magnet program at Wellwood is an IB primary years program. Each year, through the magnet application process, the program accepts about 24 out of boundary students that live outside of the boundary of the school where the program is hosted in kindergarten. The school also opens applications to grades 1 and 2 to fill available seats through student attrition. Changing the location of the magnet programs is not part of this boundary study process. It can't be a solution while we evaluate options throughout this process. Closing a magnet program and starting a new program requires Board of Education approval. And IB programs require schools to go through the IB authorization process that is pretty rigorous and intense. It's not something that can just happen within a year in most cases. So just a quick summary over our small group exercise. This is a snippet of a map that, I'm not sure what group this was, but one of the small groups during meeting 2 marked up pertaining to options 1 through 5. And during that time, based on the feedback that I viewed from BCPS-TV, option 3 seemed to garner the most attention from most committee members at last meeting. There were some suggested adjustments as well as a different configuration that was requested by one of the small groups to have Wellwood be a different configuration for Wellwood to extend east to be explored. So you'll see here that extending Summit Park to the railroad that's adjacent to Greenwood Road was a request by a few committee members. Aligning Millbrook Elementary School to the north so they can keep their students to the north here instead of having it extend south. Kind of looked like a little split that many committee members didn't favor. And then also, like I said, drafting an option that has Wellwood extend east along Smith Avenue, because currently this area here, there's a satellite zone that's currently distributed to Wellwood, and there was a request by a group of the committee members to kind of see what a configuration would look like, having them extend east, try to preserve and minimize the impact to some of those families in that area. So just a quick reminder, you guys have been really good with this, but everything is still draft. Every meeting you guys are giving markups, suggestions to change these options, which is always encouraged. Nothing is set in stone at the moment, and we expect things to change moving forward as we progress through this boundary study process. So tonight we have 7 draft options. On each small group table, you should have options 6 and 7. Options 1 through 5, we have one up here on a set of those here at the front, and then we also have a set of those there at the committee table behind you. So option 1 and 5 are still available there. You can still take time to review those options if you see the need to, but we have 2 new draft options, 6 and 7. All the option maps are now available on an interactive web map that you can access via your computers or your mobile device. That webpage is www.croppermap.com/BCPS-NWES 2023. And then all copies of the stat handout presentations and large format maps are also under www.bcps.org under resources tab for this boundary study. So you can still access this outside of the meeting to go and review them further and for the general public to review them. So just a quick little bullet points on some of the traits of option 6 and 7 and how they were developed. Looking here at option 6, it was developed from committee feedback to draft the option that has Wellwood extend east along Smith Avenue instead of extending west. And then it was also built built out so they can pick up that satellite area that is currently districted to Wellwood. It was also aimed at getting Scotch Branch elementary school utilization to 100% or less, which you'll see option 6 does. And then try to make efficient use of additional capacity for Summit Park where practical. So with Wellwood extending east along Smith Avenue to pick up that former satellite zone, you will see that Summit Park Elementary School extends further west, as some of the previous options had. So that's a good little trait to evaluate and see if you're okay with those configurations as you dive into your small groups. Looking at option 7, it's built from option 3 with some additional adjustments. It also sends a different area of Scotch Branch Elementary School to Bedford. The St. Charles Apartments and Cortland Woods Townhome communities, they are in the northeast area of Scotch Branch's current boundary. And I know in most of these options, we send that planting box that's east of the 695 to Scotch Branch. So this picks up those planting boxes that's on the other side of 695 as well and sends them to Bedford in option 7. And then also planting blocks 101, 402, and 403 and 404 are also redistricted to Summit Park in option 7 as well. And that just extends them to that railroad that runs parallel adjacent to Greenwood Road. So just a quick overview of some of the tables you'll see in your stat handout. And as you evaluate, please refer back to the data as you guys look at these configuration of these options. But you'll see that options 6 and 7 also give some relief. You'll see Scotch Branch gets to 100%. There's a seat available there, 100% just because of a rounding trait. But you'll see option 7 both get Millbrook and Wellwood both get significant relief in each option. And then also Scotch Branch gets under 100%. So just looking at some of our primary objectives, these options do look to attain that based on the utilization statistics. We also have demographics. Here's shown option 7. It's good to just evaluate where things change from current, and then also how close they get to the study area average for all schools. This is just option 7 on this slide, but you have all 7 option demographics to evaluate within your stat handout in your packets. We also have the impact tables, and just a quick reminder, any of these tables highlight how many students are impacted. The green rows show that there's no impact for these students, and any rows that are beige are showing the impact, where school they currently are and what school they will change to and how many students are impacted for each. And then you'll also have a total K-5 living attendance students impacted table within your stat handout, where you could kind of weigh how many students are impacted in each option. We also have feeder patterns, and given that Scotch Branch is going to get some relief via Bedford, you will see that an additional split is created in pretty much all of these options. And you'll see it here in option 6 that a 15% split from Bedford to Northwest Academy is created via these options, and a 16% split in option 7 from Bedford to Northwest Academy. All the schools within the study area feed 100% into one middle school. And walk zones. Part of our primary secondary considerations is trying to preserve walk students and be mindful of transportation patterns, and in all options we preserve all walk students. No, we're not impacting any walk students and redistricting them to a school where they have to then take a bus. So a quick overview of option 6. You'll have these small 8.5 by 11 maps within your handout. And just looking at that black outline on these maps to see where things change. And you'll see here in option 6, as I explained, it extends east along Smith Avenue to pick up the satellite area. Was hopeful of trying to pick up that entire satellite area, but picking up the entire area put Wellwood still significantly over capacity. So we were able to send north of that area to Summit Park. And then you'll see here that Summit Park does extend further west here, even past the railroad along this boundary line here. Wellwood and Millbrook both get significant relief, down from 160 and 149 to 99% for each of those schools in this option. Eliminates the satellite zones for each of those schools as well. As I stated before, is a 15% split is created, preserves all the walk zone students, and impacts 431 K-5 students, which is the third least of all the options. Looking here at option 7, you'll see this configuration doesn't have that satellite area extending to Wellwood. Summit Park picks up that area and extends north to the west. It was built off of option 3, so it's very, very similar to option 3 with a few small tweaks. You'll also notice here, instead of Scott Springs getting relief from Bedford picking up this area to the southeast, they pick up these communities, the St. Charles Apartments, to the north, which transportation-wise, it seems very viable for them to be able to attend Bedford in this option. Again, Wellwood gets down to 93% in this option, and Millbrook gets down to 99%. It eliminates all satellite zones within the study area, does create a 15% split for Bedford. I believe that's 16%, sorry for the typo there. And preserves all students currently in the walk zone. It impacts 500 K-5 students, so that's the third most of all 7 options. And all schools have seats available under 100%. In this option, Scott Springs gets the most relief of all the options, getting down to about 97% in this option. So with that being said, we'll have you guys collaborate within your small working groups. You guys have been working very, very well together. Each group will have about 40 minutes to review the draft options, 20 minutes per new option. And again, if you want to revisit options 1 through 5, they are available for you. We also have reference maps in the back that I haven't stated. Again, mark up these maps, post-it notes, encourage to write, circle. Definitely highlight areas that you do like, some configurations that you favor. Point those out as well. Some areas that you feel like need to change and evaluate, get some perspective on. We encourage that. After you guys work within your small working groups, we'll have a discussion around these findings. Don't really need to go over roles and responsibilities. You guys are pretty well versed on that. Again, we have the parking lot attendant sheets there to write any questions that we aren't able to answer tonight. Put those down and we'll be sure to answer those at the following meeting. And with that being said, look at the strengths and limitations of the options, give your opinion, work together, make sure all voices are heard, give everybody's, nobody's wrong in this situation, so let everybody voice their perspectives and try to be open-minded on their perspective on any of these options, and we'll reconvene here in about 40 minutes. Anybody have any questions, anything to say, questions for me or each other, any statements? Awesome. All right, we'll reconvene here soon. I'll walk around and I'll definitely be here to assist, as well as BCPS staff.
I found it looks like a ring, like maybe a diamond ring on the floor over here. If anybody's missing it, I'll put it in lost and found then. Make sure it gets right here.
All right, committee members, can we wrap it up and we can get to our open discussion about your findings, suggestions? You guys seem well equipped, so I'm gonna actually start with the blue group. You're laughing, having a good time. So. Yes, ma'am. We have blue group up there at the top. If you could divert your attention to them.
All right, so for the blue team, I can't say that we were 100% sold on one or the other. I don't even know what the percentage would be. But there were a few things that we did like about option 6, I believe. So we did like how this was shifting here to the west and how Wellwood kind of shifted more to the east to pick up their satellite zone. So we like that, where it's kind of linear picking up. We did have some concerns. We didn't really love either of the options for Bedford to pick up for option 6 or 7. We didn't really love the options to pick up to the west of 695 for a couple of reasons. One, I know that my group in the last study or the last meeting, we had some questions about transportation, especially around this old court corridor and what is the hill? Scotts Level Road, just the concerns about the accessibility there for buses. Also, concerns about not moving over capacity really, really quickly. Bedford right now, and I know they gave us some projected numbers, but just knowing the community now, there are a ton of shared domicile families, and I know that there was a group last meeting that kind of raised those concerns about the trends of that area, specifically surrounding the school growing very rapidly. So we were just wondering if those numbers could be provided to us so we could see what the actual trend is, because in both cases we're at 96, 97, I believe, for that school, and that could very quickly be over 100%. And although Scotts Branch will have an additional boundary study, it will no longer involve Bedford. So it's not like they can then absorb if within the next year, Bedford is already over capacity. 11 seats fills up very quickly. Was that it? All right, I think that was it.
Good. Did your group have any like alternatives for Scotts Branch receiving relief? Any different configurations?
Not currently.
Not currently. Okay. Just good.
Unfortunately.
That's fine.
But we know relief is coming.
That's fine. That's fine. Does anybody have any questions, concerns? Anybody else from that group? Any perspectives you want to voice? Make sure the committee. I encourage everybody to speak their mind. Don't hold. Can you come to the mic? I'm sorry. You can go there. Just for BCPS-TV. I appreciate it.
We agreed that we felt like Bedford is over capacity. I mean, to open a brand new school at 98, 99% is just really concerning. And to your point, with the number of shared domiciles, we are seeing that increase. that's going to have an impact as well. So we agree with you.
Absolutely.
And I think the biggest concern is that you can't predict it.
Right.
So 11 seats can fill very quickly if it's a shared domicile because you're not accounting for those kids. And we're not talking about the kids that are already within the Bedford zone in a shared domicile. We're talking about new families moving into the homes that already exist within that community. And if the trend is already growing very rapidly, then what are we going to do to make space for it? And then you'll have a new building very well over capacity.
Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely, I had a question for you in just given that configuration and the concern from multiple groups on Bedford's capacity, given in that general area, just using option 6 as an example, how far, Summit Park is pretty much the only school that has those additional seats. What's your opinion on it extending further? That's my question in this.
We didn't necessarily discuss that piece because of how far it had already extended this way. The closest planning block that even could, based on this configuration, would be 303, which I believe is the walking zone. So we wouldn't touch that at all. Our only suggestion really would just be not extending past that 695.
Okay. Thank you. Great take. We'll have group yellow. I want any of them. We want your perspective on any option that you feel is viable, any tweaks to it. All options are still on the table.
Which one is this? Six. Hi, everyone. So we're a very passionate group, all with very different opinions, so I don't think we ever came to a unanimous decision. And that's why we are also presenting from several maps. So option 6, and please group correct me if I get anything wrong here. We like the idea in option 6 of extending, well, some of the group members like the idea of extending Summit Park west. However, moving back planning blocks 102, 608, and 609 back to Fort Garrison. So there was concern about taking seats away from Fort Garrison, which didn't help in terms of diversity or capacity. And I think the comment made was there were only 11 kids affected, technically only 9 or 8 because some weren't moving or something to that effect. So idea of Summit Park extending westward with these few planning blocks remaining at Fort Garrison. And then in option 6 as well, the concern with Wellwood, on the right, 209, 110, and 109, possibly giving them back to Summit Park.
And then we were also saying 107 and 109 are split here, and it's the same apartment complex. And then over here, and this is based on feedback that was online and Scotch Branch feedback, that to keep it as Scotch Branch.
Correct. The idea for Scotch Branch, per our Scotch Branch representative, was for, I believe it was,
Yep.
okay. And option 7, to have planning blocks 503 and 513 from Bedford. They like the idea of those 2 planning blocks going to Bedford, and that would provide some relief for Scotts Branch. I think the overall consensus from the concern addressed from the team was in this area right here, and option 3 map shows it better. Actually, this does as well, is in this area, you have kids that are being pulled from Millbrook now going to 3 different schools. And we didn't have a solution, but the concern was, or the thought was, is there a way to send those kids to one school versus splitting them off now into 3 different schools?
Okay. Could you definitely highlight those planning blocks that you would want all of those to stay together in that area?
Because we were on 3 different maps, I don't know
it's
if there's
fine.
one map that shows that, but we can try to mark it up.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's great. That's great. Any other take?
The other thing we had said about with Scotch Branch was some feedback from the Scotch Transparent, is that moving too many of them and then having to move them again. We want to alleviate some of the overcrowding, but moving too many people and then doing it again the next year is really not fair to anyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think one question I presented to the group was things that we have to consider in reference to Scotch Branch. You know, one perspective is, well, you know, they're gonna be a part of another future study, and I had that thought last week as well. You know, why touch them now? They can deal with it for another year. But for an actual Scotch Branch parent or student, you know, why do I have to sit in another overcrowded classroom for another year? So we do have to factor and consider those different perspectives. It's easy to say one or the other, but, you know, we do have to think about we are actually dealing with these kids and the conditions that they have to go to school in every day. My other concern as a Summit Park parent is, I felt like, you know, a lot of the comments I kept hearing was, well, just, you know, why can't they go to Summit Park? Why can't they go to Summit Park? But why was it okay to move some kids to Summit Park, but it was not okay to move some kids from, to Fort Garrison? And so those were just some of my concerns. As a Summit Park parent, I felt like, you know, we were really being bashed a little bit.
The other thing we did talk about was looking at how if we're moving kids from one school to the next, that, well, yes, they shouldn't be driving by one school to go to another school.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. And some
that
of that
happened.
down there would have kids that are going to Wellwood driving by, basically by Summit Park. And then in one of these for Millbrook kids, it had them going to Wellwood in one, Fort Garrison and Summit Park in the other. But if you think about the Beltway, Wellwood is the farthest. So just trying to think of those logistics.
Absolutely. Good.
So a lot of thoughts from the Yellow Group. I'm sorry.
No, it's
I'm not
fine.
sure if it was organized or cohesive.
No, you guys were. I heard the conversations. I appreciate them. I think that we can definitely draft an option where
organized or cohesive.
that southeast
No, you
area
guys
of
were.
Fort Garrison. I heard the
those
conversations. I
2 planning
appreciate
block
them.
stays in
I
Fort
think
Garrison.
as long as it doesn't create a satellite for Summit Park extending west, I think it's plausible. It's something that we can bring forth for the committee to evaluate, and then we can make decisions moving forward. That was great conversations from you guys, so don't feel ashamed by any of your opinions. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for that. And I just wanted to reinforce that, I mean, you know, clearly we're kind of referencing different maps, but I think this just reinforces it's very critical to hear directly from our parents, from the members who are actually living within the communities. It's one thing for us to be, you know, analyzing what we see in front of us, but again, some of us don't live in these communities, so actually hearing from them directly, I think that's very critical. So I look forward to seeing those survey responses that we touched on earlier when those become available.
Absolutely. Any other opinions on that group and their take on these options? All right, I'll dive here. What group is this? You here? Oh, perfect. Green. I didn't mark these off.
Shortest person, you go over here. There you go. All right, so we had a really hard time this week looking at maps 6 and 7. We spent a lot of time talking to transportation, talking about moves for the community. And so the one that we went with the most was 7, but we still felt like Fort Garrison wasn't diverse enough. The numbers weren't moving enough for Fort Garrison. So we thought about moving some of these blocks down here up to Fort Garrison. They already are slated to go there, so hopefully that'll bring some diversity. We thought about this. I know we need to give Scotts Branch some relief. Part of what we were saying is if Campfield is still open and we have 2 Campfield people on our team, they could, if they were willing, keep that school there for the next couple years before the next boundary study happens. That would give Scotts Branch some relief. Now they wouldn't have to worry about that number of children coming back to their school. So that would definitely be an option, and you could leave that. That would also take the burden off of Bedford, taking those 77 kids that they wanted to move to Bedford away from them, opening up more seats for the school so that a new school would not be over capacity. And then we tried our best with Millbrook. Like, that is a very hard alcove to break. The only thing we could possibly consider, because this one showed us with the least The least changes in the most amount of seats, in either one, we have 1 or 2 seats, and that's still atrocious. So the only thing we could possibly consider was moving this block.
Between Slade.
Yeah, between Slade 410 over to Wellwood, and then moving some of these students to Bedford. Is that Bedford? Yeah, that's Bedford. And that would give each of the schools a little bit of relief. We played with the numbers, and everybody has better open seat availability, but there has to be some leeway, and a consideration needs to be made with keeping those kids in a school that's going to be open anyway for just a little bit longer, just to give them a bit of relief until the next boundary study happens.
So maybe what you should say, why don't you mention the planning
Sure.
blocks that we're moving?
Yeah.
And then if you want, I can mention how many seats that will open up at each school.
You can see the different roles in the group project.
Yes, we're true team here, partners.
So looking at the numbers that we came up with, and again, I think getting that information from those communities, as the gentleman previously mentioned, is definitely important. We were looking at map 7 having planning blocks 503 and 513, which would move 77 children to Scotts Branch. And then 401, 402, and 406 would move 27 children to Bedford. And 403, 407, and 408 would move 41 seats, or 41 children, I'm looking at seats on the other side, to Fort Garrison. And that leaves Bedford with 61 seats. The Campfield piece was another one that, again, that's the wild card in there. Campfield will be open for several years. They will not have kindergarten, we know that. We don't know what the programs will look like, and they currently host the general education pre-K for Randallstown, Scotts Branch, Millbrook, Bedford, did I miss? Wellwood, several, and Wellwood. So I don't know the exact number, but that's a question we wrote for BCPS of how many pre-K students would Scotts Branch have for the 24-25 school year. My guess would be 20 to 35, maybe more with the new qualifications for pre-K. That would be, 20 to 40 students who would provide relief for Scotts Branch in a building that is already going to be there with programs that already exist. But that's not the boundary study decision.
Yeah.
So, any questions on?
Any questions for them? Any other takes from this group?
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And we have the last group here. I don't see your tab. The blue group? Or red group? Red group.
So good evening, everybody. Again, we didn't have a consensus on our favorites either. Whatever you want. We made some modifications to 6 and 7 and used option 3 as a reference, considering that, 6 was derived from 3, right? I think 6 was derived from 3.
7 was derived from 3.
7 was derived from 3.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, so we made some changes to maps option 6, but the contention with those changes really, in some sense, makes Scotts Branch worse. So we kind of just put the changes in the parking lot. So with option 7, from a utilization standpoint, we liked it, but we were trying to give even more relief to Bedford. So we played around with moving a couple of the planning blocks, and I'll just read them off. So if we move planning block 401 to, what is this? Summit Park. So moving 401 to Summit Park, and then 503 and 504 to Wellwood, that would give a bit more relief to Bedford and not disrupt the current favorable utilization we see with Scotts Branch. But with those changes, there were still some concerns with the transportation that the children going to Summit Park would be on the bus a long time. So the other option, just to alleviate that, was to move several blocks to Fort Garrison. Those were 101, 404, 403, 402, and 401. We're talking about one beltway exit, but it makes a difference. But the thing that stays the same is moving 503 and 504 to Wellwood. That creates one outlying planning block, that's 513, that would still stay with Bedford, but that's the outlier, the satellite, if you will. It's kind of on its own, but that's how we were able to give some more relief to Bedford.
All right. I appreciate the deep thought. Any other questions, concerns, conversations your group had that you feel the full committee needs to hear?
Well, the point raised by our principal in the group here is that the bigger concern is there continues to be overutilization with the Title I schools and underutilization with the non-Title Is. So, but I do kind of like the idea of keeping Canfield open a little while longer, just to kind of stave off until Scotts Branch's boundary study gets underway. So,
okay,
that was a personal thing.
Personal preference. That's fine.
Okay.
All righty. Anybody else? We appreciate it. As you guys can see, it's not an easy process. You know, we're impacting students, we're impacting families. It's never something that's just going to be a quick 1 to 2 and we have an answer. There's so many different perspectives, opinions that have to be taken into account. We're here on meeting 3 and we're on map 7, and we're probably going to bring 2 more at the minimum at next meeting. Speaking of our next meeting on October 25th, we're going to have to make some decisions on dwindling down some options. So we'll definitely want to come on time to make sure that we have adequate time to evaluate the new options that we bring forth, that really takes into some of the perspectives and ideas that you guys drawn up, some of the perspective from the community members submitting, especially in regards to Fort Garrison. And then we will be having a voting session, in a sense, on what options that we can eliminate so that we're not going to the public information session with 10 options. We want to give the public something to digest that's going to be viable, that adheres to our primary and secondary considerations, and as always, adheres to the objective of this, what's best for the students in the study area as a whole. So I appreciate the conversations. Nobody takes offense by any perspective. We appreciate every perspective that you guys have. You guys do not have an easy job. We're taking it all in, and we're going to try to bring something forth to you that answers and quells some of your concerns about these options, but that's going to adhere to our primary secondary considerations and what's best for students in the study area as a whole. Does anybody else have anything to say before we adjourn tonight? I know. Come on. You want me to bring it to you? I think I don't want your perspective to not be heard. Would you like me to? Yeah. Come, please. You sure? I encourage you to speak up. Speak up. I definitely encourage you. They do. Your members. There's no wrong statement. You sure? All right. By all means, we have next meeting. If you want to voice it, by all means, do it. Absolutely.
As a building leader, I don't get a vote in this, so in some ways, as a building leader, I think that we need to look at the percentages. If you look across the chart at every option, the same schools are the lowest percent, and they're predominantly white. And white woman teaching at a predominantly black school, I'm looking at the schools that have almost to capacity across the board being majority of black students. So that sits in a place that's in my feelings. Mm-hmm. And I just think that we have to consider that, because if I'm at a school that's going from 148% to 99%, I'm supposed to be excited about that. But I still have 2 or 3 seats left, and a school that is at 83 or 85% with not as congested of an area has all these extra seats. And so it still doesn't alleviate enough at those other schools.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's a great perspective. Great perspective. You'll see that it's a challenge to try to fill capacity for these schools while adhering by transportation and trying to minimize impact on these communities. So it's something that you should definitely take her statement in your judgment as you evaluate these options and as you kind of see, oh, this area is stretching out a little further than I like. That kind of quells to her concern of she wants to get Summit Park, and that was a big concern in meeting 2 was, hey, let's get Summit Park filled up. So it's a great perspective. It's a lot of things to evaluate. You'll realize sometimes you're taking one step forward, 2 steps back, but at the end of the day, we're looking to achieve our objective and adhere by those considerations. So I appreciate your work, and I look forward to working with you here October 25th and coming back and getting back in the nitty gritty of everything. So I appreciate it, guys. Take care.